What's going on, Badger fans? Wisconsin plays maybe their best game of the year. They kind of dismantle a sneaky, pretty solid Nebraska team. We're going to talk about it. Start with the return of Connor Essegian. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Thank you for making this your first listen every single day. Really do appreciate it, as always. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code Locked On for $20 off your purchase. Justin, as always, if you see any comments you want, we'll star them up. We'll hit them in the second segment here. I think we got to start here because the previous show we talked about it. We need to start here if we're being honest.
This is awesome. It's a good day for me. Come on in here, buddy. Get up on that line.
Get up on that line. I meant the call line. Get up on that call line.
Sure. That's
all right. So last episode, all of us were on, or she was on too, and I said, I'm not talking about Connor Essegian anymore until something changes, right?
Well, something changed.
12 points in 13 minutes. Are you kidding me? Averaged 9.923 points per minute, which is basically like prime Michael Jordan type of. He looked. I mean, listen. I said it on Twitter. If you get like flamethrower Connor off the bench, the ceiling on this team is unlocked.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I mean, I like to see him hit a bunch of shots. I will say this: he had a great game. He was a little bit more aggressive with shooting the ball than I would have liked, but I understand. Like if he's going to get more playing time, he's going to have to prove it. Mm-hmm. But I don't necessarily want him putting the ball up as much as he is, because I think that takes you out of offensive flow if he continued to do that when it's not necessarily the best move. But yeah, it was great to see him get back on a roll. For the most part, I liked just about every shot he took. There were a couple I felt like it was like, you're forcing it a little bit here because you got a hot hand.
I like it, though. To your point, like I hear you on that one, but I felt like, this game, even it wasn't necessarily put away at points, but it did feel like Nebraska was kind of punched in on the match, struggling to get up. Mm-hmm. There were a couple plays where Connor, second half, was a little too aggressive maybe, but I liked it just because I felt like he's finally feeling it, right? He's finally feeling it. He's a confident shooter. Take every shot you can get within reason. Like, I don't want you pulling up from like Steph Curry half court, but like he had a bit of a pull up mid range. That was tough. I liked it. I just like the confidence of it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's good to see him come in and not look hesitant in his, being out on the court. He definitely looked like he was ready to go out there and roll, and definitely showed it. Like there was a chance that him not being confident in his shot, and that was not the case at all.
He had some deep ones, but he had good deep ones, right? Mm-hmm. Like the ball swung to him, he was open, and then you could tell as the game went on, like he still scares the living daylights out of defense from behind the perimeter. Nebraska adjusted. That opens more things up. His impact on the game when he's on the court offensively is so much more than just as a shooter. He is a gravitational force that pulls defenders to him, which opens up everything. That's why he's so important to this team, is he can make life easier for the other four guys on the court when he's playing, and he's playing well.
Well, and it's the underrated part of this is the fact that if this is what you get from him going forward, and obviously he's not going to be hit this hot every game, but if you have somebody that's having an off night, he gives you some flexibility to come in and be able to add some offense that's not there. Klesmet wasn't great today. Mm-hmm. I think he only had the 3 points, right?
He did. So
Connor kind of picked him up, and Connor gave the 12 points. This is what him being added in as a depth piece does. It allows a guy who's not having a good night to not feel obligated to continue to force it if it's not there. And we've talked ad nauseum at this point about how Chucky has kind of been that, like, enjoyed that this year, not feeling like he has to force it because of the offensive weapons that they've had out there. There's other guys on the court that have some of that it would help them. If Storr's not having a great night, if Connor's hot where he doesn't have to necessarily push it, if Blackwell's not necessarily hitting, which most nights he is, just because he plays so smart, it's hard not to get the easy looks. But Klesmet's definitely a guy who I think is hot and cold. Mm-hmm. And especially when he has to play heavy defense, Connor gives him an opportunity to kind of be the offensive side of that, where he can go out there and Klesmet can worry about clamping down his man, and Connor can worry about putting in points.
Almost like a bit of a baseball platoon in a way.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
I'm going to let you take the lead on this, Justin, because I kind of took the lead on the last part. You had mentioned this in the chat. Commandant Klink says, I actually noticed Connor was working hard on defense. I mean, Bo is right. He'll never be a great defensive player, but you mentioned something when you and I were just talking offline about his defense today.
Oh, yeah. He was the effort level was much better. For the most part, his awareness was a lot better, too. There were a couple of times I saw a slip up where his man kind of just sort of slowly moved out to the 3-point line. I'm like, you got to stay on him. But I've saw a couple of our guys. The defense in the second half in this game, you could see guys were a little looser than what they were. There were a couple of times like the one where Wahl didn't close out on his man. I was sitting there like,
a couple.
Come on, man. But yeah, it happens when you're up double digits the entire game. Like it kind of turns into a rec league game in some ways, where guys start jacking up threes and stuff because things are going in, and you just don't necessarily tighten up and tighten the screws as much as you should. But yeah, Connor, his effort level looked good. He seemed like he was always on his man for the most part. Really, the only one that I had huge fault on was on the break when Gary got that layup. Connor lost him.
I remember that.
Your head on that. You got to keep him between him and the ball, and you turned your back on Gary, and he just came right behind you.
Yep, that was an easy one. That was a bad transition play, and I was coming off a miss. I think he had too, so it was kind of like a weird or a turnover, one of the two. I thought this was interesting. This was another game. I talked about this a lot last year when I thought fans were maybe being a little too hard on Hepburn because he's not the guy that should be leading the offensive string. You talked about it a little bit. Like this is prime version of Hepburn right now. He's controlling.
This is who he should be. And then on the nights when he's not hitting, then he can just worry about distributing.
He's such a good natural point guard. And now because there's weapons around him, we're finally seeing that version of Hepburn. I'm really excited. We got a couple comments here with that.
He's a Mark Jackson point guard. Like one of those guys that would have 7-8 assists and 11, 12 points.
But it feels like he's always in control. Like I made the point of making notes on the game. As I watch it, I make notes so I kind of remember what I want to talk about. And I said he finished with 6 assists, but it feels like he had 10. I think there's a couple hockey assists in there. He just controls everything offensively for the Badgers right now.
Yeah, that's been the biggest thing with this team is that, and why they're going to be a problem for a lot of the teams they face, is their ability to control tempo and just not let teams force them. The only game that I've seen this year where they look like there were two of them, Arizona and Providence. They looked like they got sped up, and it showed in the quality of play for them. For the most part, everybody else, they have dictated pace of play, and it's been good. The only team that they lost outside of that was Tennessee, who shot really, really well, and it was a really good team. It is a really good team.
And by the way, all those teams you're mentioning, like those are all really good teams too. Yeah. Like they didn't lay an egg again. I mean, Providence on the road is a tough matchup. Arizona and Tennessee, like those are really good teams, man. Doesn't mean they played their best version of themselves, but those are really good teams.
I need to dive into this a little bit because I keep seeing things on here from Bo Dragon that are positive things that he's saying about the Wisconsin basketball team. And it's like, what's going on here? It's just interesting.
Has he been hacked?
I don't know. Maybe somebody took over his account.
No, we love Bo, man.
He called us a 3 seed earlier, and I was like, whoa.
We might be. That's the thing.
There's a chance they have a shot.
Maybe.
You and I talked about this coming into this game before the game started. I said to Ryan, where would you place us? Do you think we're 15? Do you think we can be top 10? And I said, I think we need to start hitting from the outside to be top 10, but I think that they're capable because I don't know how deep college basketball is this year. Like there's not that many dominant teams in college basketball.
And for the record, I said, no, I don't think this is going to finish as a top 10 team. This was before this game. So I'm glad that conversation wasn't recorded. I'll say this, and we say this after every game. There's good and bad with every game. You're not going to shoot 50% from 3 every game. Kudos to them doing that, right? Like there are players on this team that there is some regression to the mean. Like we expect Hepburn to shoot better. We expect Connor to shoot better. You're still not going to shoot this well every game. But when they
were due though too.
Yeah,
like
that's
some of these guys were shooting below their career norms.
Which is what I said, right? Like regression to the mean for some of these players. However, as a team, you're still rarely going to shoot this well. But and if this team shoots really well from the floor, which they're capable of occasionally, you could beat any team. You could beat Purdue if you shoot really well from the deep. All right, let's take a quick break. I want to get into Greg Gard coming up after this. a little bit more. How do you guard this offense? And then we'll get your comments. Justin, if you see anything that's super interesting in the chat, definitely star it. We're going to take a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs. It's where we go on the Locked On Network because it is fast, it's simple, it's easy. You can have explosive winnings just like this Badgers offense. You get explosive results on FanDuel with spreads, parlays, futures, teasers. It's all there. If you want to bet on, maybe start putting some money on the Badgers basketball team, right? Maybe Final Four, do some futures. There might be something here. Or, of course, the Niners Super Bowl, which is still a basic lock for this. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you do a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is incredibly easy. Payouts are incredibly fast. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Justin, any comments you want to throw up here?
Yeah, I got a whole bunch of them I brought up. Number one here. We'll start with the Bo Dragon train. Bo Dragon Badgers are looking at a 3 seed at the moment, barring injury. I think it's in play for them. I do think that they're capable of that, especially when I don't think this is an overly strong Big Ten this year. They're going to do this to a lot of teams in the Big Ten this year because I don't know if most of the teams. And to be fair, Nebraska is a good offensive team. They are, and we're averaging 74, I believe, points per game in this coming to this one, somewhere in that range, 74.7, something like that. So this is not a team that is incapable of it. And they're a starting group, and you could see it. Tamanaga is a problem. Yeah, that. There's a game where if we weren't shooting hot, where he would have been a big issue for us, given how the guy needs literally zero space to be able to get off a 3-point shot. And he's got such a quick release. But their group overall, like I said, I've kind of, kicking this around my head. They tend to be a mirror of Wisconsin. They're just not as tested. Like the starting 5 is really strong. They have a couple of depth pieces that are pretty good. And you could see it. I mean, we gave up 72 of them in this one. This is a team that is capable of putting up points on you. I think they're actually going to, this is one of the first years I've looked at them and I've said, I think this is a team that can actually finish in the top 5 or 6 in the Big Ten. I think they probably will when all is said and done. They blew out Indiana the other night.
Mm-hmm. I want to throw this comment up here. Justin, we have talked for a couple of years about the close games, even in the wins and the losses. This team has the capability of putting somebody down and then just stepping on their throat and never letting them back in the game. And Nebraska tried. Nebraska made a couple mini runs where they got to 11. They got to 12. And then it was a 3 from Crowl.
Too much offensive efficiency.
Yeah,
lots of easy open looks.
You just can't keep this Wisconsin team on that. And what do you need to come back from those deficits? You need the other team to go on a 4-minute drought, right? A 3.5-minute drought, which we did every game last year. It felt like there's too many offensive pieces on this team to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was one of the things I said to you before we came in. Storr didn't have a great game. I actually thought he was pretty poor today offensively. The shot selection and some of the things, he forced a few things that I didn't love, which I think is going to be a growing thing with him because now that he's starting to kind of, explode a little bit, there's going to be games where he thinks he can do a little too much and he's got to rein it back in and realize, I need to take the good shot that's there. But we scored 88 with him being, I would say, below average in this game.
Yeah, he certainly is more in the hood, under the hood.
Yeah, and we never, if you think of the Johnny Davis season, we never would have won a game with him being poor. No. He still would have had to have had 18 in a game.
No,
it wasn't inefficient.
We lost several games with him being excellent.
Yeah.
We never would have won a game with him being poor. Let's throw this one up from Deborah, because you and I talked about this, Justin. Blackwell. Deborah says, Blackwell scrappy, good instincts. He's getting challenged much more in conference games now, but he's a determined guy. He has elite level, 100% level instincts and feel for the game as a freshman. There were 3 plays in a row in the first half. Nebraska went zone, and Blackwell just cut him up.
Those high post.
Yeah. By dicing either into the high post for a jumper or dicing through in between that gap, getting the ball. And he didn't finish every time, but the point is he's generating really good offense out of those looks. He has just such feel for pace, for spacing, for cutting, for timing. I made the comment in the Discord. I can't wait to see what he looks like in a couple of years. And someone said he might be in the NBA, and he might be. Yeah. But he's going to be such a problem.
That screen and jumper from the mid-range that he finished his last 2 points, that is an NBA shot. Beautiful. If he can learn to hit that consistently, he will play in the NBA because that is something that any team will take on the pick and roll. And he's capable of getting downhill and being able to get to the rim off of that. So If he can hit that shot, I mean, that's basically what Booker is. Booker is a guy who can pull up at that spot, or he can take it all the way to the rim.
Mm-hmm.
That's the type of offense that you can look at out of him if he can develop that. And he's a good enough 3-point shooter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's unbelievable how advanced he is as a freshman. Unbelievable.
This is like junior level player that he is right now.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. This is what you'd expect from like a junior wing that's played a bunch of minutes. This level of basketball IQ. He's I almost want to go back and see who coached him. Like he has really been coached really well because he understands the game it's him and Hepburn probably on this team, like maybe Wahl again.
Yeah, that are the high IQ guys. I would say, yeah, if you're looking at guys who are just advanced compared to normal college players, those two by far. They have a really good feel for things. Mm-hmm. Chucky seems to really, truly understand the moment in games of, I need to reel this back in and we need to slow it down and get a good possession here. And we've seen NBA guys that don't know how to do that. Like we talked about the Milwaukee Bucks back when they had that title run. I'm like, this team is the dumbest team I've ever seen in terms of just not understanding the moment.
There's a lot of guys like that.
Oh yeah, so it's incredible. Like this is going to help them in a lot of the games coming up. And somebody had posted in the chat that this team has yet to have a game within 5 points, and that is because of the efficiency that we discussed. But it's also because this team really understands the value of possessions when it starts to get close and realizes, hey, this is not a possession that I can come down here and chuck up a bad three, or rush a shot or something like that. Let's get a good one here. And they're unselfish. So they will continue to make the extra pass until somebody gets an easy play.
Yeah, I want to this is from Greg Linscomb. How did Blackwell end up only a 3-star?
He was less aggressive offensively at the high school level than he's been at the college level.
Some players fall through cracks too.
Yeah.
Like whether maybe he didn't go to as many AAU circuit games, maybe eyes weren't on him as much. Maybe he did commit a little early, right? So he didn't play the recruiting game as much. There's all sorts of reasons, Greg, but like this is what a 4-star freshman looks like, right? So that 3-star,
a good 4-star freshman.
This is a really good. If you brought in like a fringe 5-star guy and he's playing like this, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's why he was a 5-star.
Yeah,
but he is so good. And honestly, I mentioned this in the Discord, and certainly curious what people in chat and even what you think, Justin. I know we already kind of talked about this a little bit in various places. I think it might be he's just not like a jump out of the gym athlete. Like he's a good athlete. He's definitely not a bad athlete, but he doesn't make like the plays that AJ Storr makes.
Yeah, he's not a guy that's looking to elevate and just posterize somebody. I think he can throw it down. We're not seeing it from him, but I don't know if his game has grown that way with his athleticism. Sometimes there's guys like that who maybe had the late growth surge and got more physically dominant, who just, it doesn't fit their game. Like they're not used to it, being able to just go up and do things athletically like that. He almost seems that way. Like he's got an old man's game.
He does.
Like it's really smart. And it's like, dude, you're a better athlete than this. Like there are times I watch him go up for boards and I'm like, that almost looks like a power forward going up for it. And you're like, he could probably just go up and just chuck it down if he wanted to, but I just don't think that's in his demeanor.
I think some of it is he has such a good feel for the game. Like it's almost like some players understand that you don't need to dunk to make an impact. It sounds kind of weird, but his feel is so strong. He can settle. Here's what it is. He's comfortable settling for that mid-range 8-foot jump shot when a lot of younger players that maybe don't have that feel are just flying into the rim to try to yam somebody.
Turns into a turnover or a missed dunk.
Occasional highlight play that way, but you also get a charge, a turnover. He's just settling for that. Whatever is there, he takes what the game gives him. He has a subtlety to his game that a lot of people in the recruiting process probably don't appreciate, right? Which is why he's probably a 3-star. If he had just taken over an AAU game and dunked on a couple people, he might be a 4-star, but he has such a feel, Justin. I love it. All right, let's take one more quick break for our friends of the show. Just a bunch I still want to get into. Definitely star any more comments. I want to talk Greg Gard a tiny bit too in this next segment. Today's episode is also brought to you by our good friends over at Gametime. Gametime is the number one source for all your tickets, everything you need, concerts, theater, comedy, sports. It's all there on Gametime. Fast, easy to use. You get pictures of the seats before you buy, so you know exactly what view you're going to get of Connor Essegian coming around to pin down to hit a 3 over Purdue. You know what it's going to look like from your seats because you get those pictures. Plus great deals, last-minute flash sales. It's all there. It's fast, easy. Give it as a gift for somebody. If you want to give somebody some Niners playoff tickets, Gametime's probably the place to do it. If you wanted to gift your favorite Badgers podcaster some Niners playoff tickets, Gametime's probably the place you would go to do that. right? It is an exceptional place for all your entertainment needs. Snake the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create the account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, just let's keep rolling here.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that the Locked On 49ers guy already has tickets. He doesn't need them.
This is a good point. This is a very good point. I want to hit on this, Justin, and then I want to kick it over to you for your last thoughts. I think there's a scenario here where Greg Gard deserves so much credit because he's done the accountability thing with Connor Essegian that a lot of coaches are not old school enough to do. Like, he's held him accountable, but he hasn't lost him, right? And see, he obviously hasn't lost him because Connor came in firing today, confident. The crowd loves him. He's fired up. He's playing better defense. A lot of coaches would not have held Connor to the standard that he did. Or they would have lost him, right? They would have benched him and said, you're not playing defense, and Connor wouldn't have been ready. There's a scenario here where Greg Gard deserves a ton of credit. I
think a lot of it depends on his conversations with him and how the subjects have been broached. And honestly, it depends on Connor's ego. Is Connor humble enough to know that he's not a perfect player and that there's things he needs to work on? Because there's ways that Gard's saying it. There is a scenario where Connor, if he puts it all together, can become a guy who ends up getting a contract and is able to be a 3-point specialist for a team. Like, I think that he's capable of being that level of shooter. Now, he's not going to be a guy who's probably going to be a regular for NBA, but there's a place for those guys in the NBA that's their one elite skill. And I think Gard is basically, you sit down with a guy like this and you say, listen, if you can't defend at the college level, you're not playing at the NBA level. Like, you can't be just a chair out there on the court. You have to be able to go out there and actually at least move your feet and stay in front of a guy. And if you can do that, and I can get you to do that all the time, the sky is the limit for you in terms of what you're capable of. Because he's got a lot of things in his game from an intelligence standpoint that play up at the NBA level. He moves really well on the court. He actually, it was nice to see him be aggressive with his rebounding. There were a couple of times he went up on free throw attempts and stuff and went up and grabbed it. But there are things that he does really well that do translate. There's just a lot of things that he does poorly right now that he's got to elevate to the point where it's like, this is neat. You need to be at least an average college player to above average to be able to do this.
That's a good point. With it takes a humility on the player's part as well. Mm-hmm. Like Connor obviously didn't sulk, right? That's a really good point. What about the Tyler Streeter comment here? JB is sort of a Chris Middleton type to me.
I mean, Middleton's 6'8". But if you're talking athletically, there's some similarity there. I mean, he's a combo guard in the NBA. Like, if he makes it to the NBA, he's going to be a guy that goes out there. He's probably going to play some point, which I think he's capable of. He seems to have a good feel for. I think the handle will get there with him. He's capable of being a good ball handler. He's very physical. So if you can get him to play point, I mean, a 6'5" point that can be physical, that's a guy that will play pretty well for most of it. And he's a good defender. But yeah, athletically, I think that's not a terrible guy to compare him to. It's just that he's a little bit bigger. They're going to be doing different things on the court. It's an interesting topic. I'm curious. That's actually who you think about. Oversized point guard, like a Kyle Lowry, might be a guy that you kind of look at a little bit. Not necessarily huge, but a guy who plays physical, not super quick, but a good shooter, good rebounder, plays physical, plays defense. Like that's closer to, I think, what you're looking at for an NBA comp. I'd have to really dig into it to kind of think of a guy that probably fits him better. But
yeah, I mean, I know one of the Big Ten guys compared him to Ayo Dosunmu, the Illinois guy who's a second round pick. I see that one. If we might do a whole
I think he was a little bit more athletic, though. He might have been a tad more explosive.
We could do a whole show on that. But let's pop more into this game, Justin. I kind of dominated some of that talk. I want to kick it to you. Anything else you saw in this game that really excited you, interested you? Other thoughts, players?
I came into this game actually really concerned with us in this one, that we would that we would let them into the game and potentially let Nebraska get hot. This Nebraska team they're a solid team. And this is a game that in the past Wisconsin gets sloppy with sometimes, and they let a team hang around that they shouldn't. And they handled their business. The things that we've seen them do well all season long, for the most part, they did well. I thought the defense was a little bit sloppy, but when you're scoring the way they are, things get a little bit looser. But the rebounding was there. I thought for the most part, we were continuing to get to the line. Mm-hmm. And so and we shot the lights out. So it's really hard to argue anything else from the offensive side. But this team's ability seems to translate game to game. And if they continue to do that, they are going to be a problem for almost everybody they play.
I want to talk a little bit. Tyler Stewart says maybe Malcolm Brogdon. This is from Bo Dragon, who says Gard obviously deserves credit, but I still don't like him. That's fair.
That's fair. That's 100% fair.
All opinions here are fair. I want to talk about this a little bit because I saw this in the Discord a lot with people being frustrated with the defense at times, giving up some shots. I agree there were moments where you lost track of shooters. I still think this team fouls a little too much on shooters. That's like a multiple game issue for me. But I will say this. If you score more, you're going to give up more. That's just how basketball works in general. And the reason is it's kind of psychological. Previous Badger teams, you had to be locked in on every single freaking possession defensively, because if you weren't, you'd lose games. Now, when you're scoring 88, you're just not going to be as locked in. I'm sorry. That's how it works. And you're going to give up a little bit more. Now, you still have to be defensively.
I mean, you still won by 16.
Right. You can't hold this team to the same defensive standard if they're scoring 30 points more offensively. That's just not
and Nebraska is good offensively. Like, this is not playing Minnesota or somebody like that. That's just a train wreck team out there. So this is a team that you look at it. Wisconsin is they're going to do this to a lot of teams this year. We're going to have a lot of games where we coast, just because this is one of those teams where, like I said, I've been saying it since the beginning of the season. We're so efficient offensively. Other teams cannot do this because they don't execute at this level. They get hot. They may have some athletes that are capable of doing some things. But the problem is you can't rely on your athleticism to constantly just score unless you have multiple guys that are just that more talented and athletic than the guy across from them. And even then, a lot of it still comes down to decision-making and having good smarts on the actual court and understanding where you need to go. Like, Storr is a prime example of a guy who's all-world athlete, but he doesn't always make the soundest decisions in terms of like court sense and knowing where he should go. And that is one of those things that if Wisconsin continues to do what they're doing, even the more athletic teams are going to struggle with them because they typically don't play as crisp and like locked in offensively as what most teams do.
Jason Gelden says Crowl had a quiet, nice game too. Justin, you're dead right with that last post as well. Like that last thought. Sorry. It's just this team, even when players like the story you said, it's not all there. It's still everything around him is so much better that he doesn't have to be all there. I think that's really good as well. I want to talk to this one a little bit. Gelden, Jason talking about Crowl. The problem with this team, unless you have a bruiser in the middle, like a real dude, like Purdue has a dude. There's a couple teams that have dudes. Unless you have dudes in the middle, then this Wisconsin team gives you all sorts of issues because you have to space out the shooters, and then Crowl and Wahl just feast on the inside. They just feast. And that's
Wahl is honestly the perfect matchup for him, for Crowl, because he's basically he's a slashing like 3-4 type guy at the power forward position, which allows you to have that athletic guy who's doing all the energy stuff next to Crowl, who isn't a super light foot, type center guy who moves super well athletically, but he's capable of going out there and just being physical and doing some things. So Wahl kind of cleans up all the space around him that he can't reach.
David Valesky says, think you two are getting a bit too high on this team. Need to see them more tested on the road. Justin, I'll kick this one to you to start.
Honestly, who are they going to play that's going to really challenge them this year other than Purdue? Like there's not a team out there. I mean, Illinois, I guess you could make them you could be worried about them, but they lost their best player. Like I think that Illinois still has a chance to come down to earth going forward, where they're not quite as good. But we're not going to truly be challenged till the tournament time in terms of other than Purdue against a team that's going to probably really push us offensively. Well, because most of the Big Ten teams aren't good offensively. They're good defensively.
Well, to be fair, maybe that's what David's talking about. You're going to get into March. You're not going to be playing the Kohl Center. I have consistently, I feel like, been a little lower on this team than Justin. And Justin may be right, by the way. I do still think there's a bit of a depth issue on this team. I don't think it's as deep as people think. I do think it's a little inconsistent shooting. This is not a perfect team by any stretch. I don't think it's a Final Four team. I don't think it wins the Big Ten. And maybe you're right, David. Maybe we're still a little high on them. But I'm starting to change I thought this was a Sweet 16 type ceiling. I think it might be Elite 8 now. I think this team is better than I thought it was. I still think there's holes though here. This is not a perfect team by any stretch.
No. Ideally you'd like to have an athletic 5.
Mm-hmm.
I like Crowl, but you'd like to have a guy who's capable of just being dominant down in the post. And I don't know if he's able to do that against some of the better centers that he might see. From what I can see with this team, looking at them, what we've seen from them offensively, there's only one type of team that I've really been uncomfortable with them, and that's the teams that play at a really high pace and are athletic. We saw it with Providence. We saw it with Arizona.
Yeah,
both those teams rushed us, got us moving, playing faster than we wanted to, and we were exploited. And the issue I saw with that is, if you remember the old Wisconsin teams would play teams like those, they would grind those games so much. And that's what we should have done. Instead, we tried to go head-to-head with those two teams and push the ball and play with them offensively. That's kind of the problem with being as efficient as we are offensively, is you think that you can do maybe a little bit more than you probably can. Like if we were to play those two teams again, grind it out, win in the 60s, win in the upper 60s against Providence. If you're going to play Arizona, win in the 60s. Make them play at a pace that they cannot stand, and grind that game to the point where you're hopefully getting them out of a rhythm, because they are so athletic that they're going to be a problem for you if you let them get out and run.
Yeah, that's a team that Wisconsin's not going to beat. Honestly, you're not.
They're not. They're not.
Unless
we match up so poorly with them, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, that there are teams that athletically this is obviously an upgraded Wisconsin athletic team compared to what we normally are. Then you look at an Arizona and you're like, oh, that's what a really athletic, high-level college team looks like. We're not there yet. You had Freetagen next year.
Yeah, that's a step up. That's going to be a big difference.
But that team is hyper-athletic, and they play at an incredible pace. That's just a bad matchup. This is from Commandant. I'm still waiting for Ryan to fire the football recruiting cans for receiver and defensive line. You and me both, brother. Listen, the powder is in the cannons. I am ready to shoot. I need somebody to come here to play those spots.
We'll see what's happening. There were a bunch of commits or recruits on campus this weekend. There are apparently 5 of them. I don't know who they all are, other than the Toledo cornerback.
Yeah,
but
he's on the corner too.
Yeah.
Justin, we'll wrap it up there. Any last takeaway from here that we haven't covered? Do you think sufficiently?
No, I think we got into this one pretty good. It was a really good win for them. They look dominant, which is what you want to see. We need to continue to have these games where we pull away and stay fresh for the rest of the season, because one of the biggest shortcomings of the last 4 or 5 teams that we've had have been we have so many close games and so many high-stress games that the teams get burnt out by the end of the season. And this team is getting the opportunity to stay fresh, take care of business early, you build depth. And a nice game by Winter today, I thought, showed some growth, showed some confidence. And that's a step. Like if you can get him out on the court more and get him more opportunity to show it, if you can get this from him where he can come into a tournament game and score 7-8 points, that's huge for this team to have a big that can potentially do some of that.
That's a great point. I thought Winter played a little more aggressively, cutting to the rim hard. He still needs. You can tell he needs to get a little stronger.
He's playing hard though. You can see it out there. He definitely gives effort on defense.
This is going to be a big offseason for him. If he can add 10, 20 pounds of muscle next year, he could be a real problem. John Burns says they're playing well together, playing well inside out, rebounding. These are hallmarks of teams that go deep in the tournament. It's a good comment there, John. All right, on Wisconsin, big win for the Badgers. Continuing going through the Big Ten here. Let's talk more later, guys. Let's keep chopping it up. You know we will on this channel. All right, on Wisconsin, Justin, thank you as always, and let's talk later.